Get your filthy hands off my son right now! Robert Wittmann's voice echoed through the mansion like thunder, causing the soft classical music playing in the background to stop abruptly. Kesha Washington, 32, froze in the middle of the living room, still delicately holding the small hands of Tyler, the 8-year-old autistic boy who had finally started smiling after months of total isolation. The 45-year-old millionaire stood at the entrance of the room, his $3,000 suit impeccable, but his face contorted with a rage Kesha had never seen before. Beside him, 3 guests from Manhattan high society watched the scene with expressions of shock and disapproval, as if they had caught a crime in progress. "How dare you touch my son without permission?" Robert advanced toward Kesha, who instinctively placed herself between him and Tyler. The boy, frightened by the shouting, began to rock back and forth, signs of stress Kesha recognized perfectly after 2 years of caring for him. "Mr. Wittmann, Tyler was having a meltdown, and the music calmed him down," Kesha explained calmly, even though she felt the blood boiling in her veins. "He asked to dance, and You just completely forgot your place in this house," Robert interrupted cruelly. "You are the cook, not the nanny, not the therapist, and certainly not someone qualified to touch my son." One of the guests, a blonde woman draped in expensive jewelry, whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Robert, you need to be more careful about who you hire. These people sometimes feel too comfortable in our homes." Kesha felt the humiliation burn her skin like acid, but she maintained her composure with a dignity that only fueled Robert's anger. For 2 years, she had been far more than just a cook in that mansion. With a degree in nutrition from Columbia University and expertise in child development, she had disguised herself as a domestic worker for reasons no one there could imagine. "Tyler, come here now," Robert ordered curtly. The boy looked between his father and Kesha, his wide eyes filled with confusion and fear. For the first time in months, Tyler had genuinely connected with someone. He had danced, he had laughed, and now it was all being ripped away by an attack of prejudice disguised as paternal protection. "Kesha is leaving," Robert announced coldly to his son. "You will no longer play with her. I'll find a nanny better suited to your needs." The words hit Kesha like bullets, but it was Tyler's reaction that broke her heart. The boy began to cry silently, the kind of crying she had learned to recognize as deep despair. Tyler wasn't just losing Kesha. He was losing the only person in that house who truly understood him. "Gather your things and leave immediately," Robert said, pulling out his wallet and tossing a few $100 bills onto the marble floor. "There's your severance pay." Kesha looked at the scattered money and then at Robert. In that moment, something changed in her eyes. The careful submission she had maintained for 2 years vanished, replaced by a cold determination that made Robert instinctively step back. "Very well, Mr. Wittmann," she said, her voice calm but heavy with a dark promise. "I'll get my things." As she climbed the stairs to the maid's room where she kept her belongings, Kesha smiled for the first time since entering that house. Robert Wittmann had no idea who he was really firing. He didn't know she had spent 2 years methodically documenting every financial crime, every tax evasion scheme, every bribe she had witnessed within those walls, and most importantly, he didn't know about the folder hidden under her mattress. Evidence powerful enough to destroy not only his reputation, but the entire fortune he had built on corruption and lies. If you're wondering how a simple cook managed to obtain such devastating information about a millionaire, subscribe to the channel, because this story of revenge is only beginning. And what Kesha did in the next 48 hours would forever change the lives of everyone involved. 20 minutes later, Kesha was in the kitchen collecting her professional chef's knives while Robert celebrated with his guests in the living room. Cruel laughter echoed through the mansion like nails on a chalkboard, each comment more venomous than the last. "Did you see how she reacted when I put her in her place?" Robert boasted, pouring 500 a bottle Scotch whiskey. These people need to know who's boss. I give them decent jobs and they think they can mingle with us." Margaret Thornfield, the wife of a senator, laughed as she adjusted her pearl necklace. "Good thing you acted quickly, Robert. Imagine if someone had filmed that scene. A black cook dancing with your disabled son? The tabloids would love to twist that." Kesha paused when she heard those words, her fists clenching involuntarily. For 2 years, she had swallowed comments like these, each one piling up like fuel. For a fire she kept under control. But Robert had no idea who he was dealing with, because Kesha Washington was no ordinary cook. She was the daughter of a renowned Detroit neurosurgeon and a civil rights attorney. She had graduated magna cum laude from Columbia University before earning a master's degree in child development from Harvard. Her disguise as a domestic worker served one very specific purpose. 2 years earlier, Tyler had been a patient of Dr. James Washington, Kesha's father, who had been consulted about possible surgical interventions for his neurological condition. During that consultation, Dr. Washington discovered irregularities in Tyler's medical records, suggesting deliberate negligence by Robert's hired staff. When Dr. Washington tried to report his findings, Robert used his influence to discredit the doctor, threatening his license and destroying his reputation. 3 months later, under the stress of Robert's smear campaign, Dr. Washington suffered a fatal heart attack. Kesha had not infiltrated the Wittmann household for money. She had done it for revenge, and for 2 years, she methodically documented every crime she witnessed. Robert laundered money through fake foundations, bribed health inspectors to approve his unsafe restaurants, and evaded millions in taxes through sophisticated schemes. Even more devastating, Kesha discovered that Robert had defrauded life insurance companies by faking disabilities for Tyler that didn't exist, illegally collecting government benefits while flaunting his wealth. Every suspicious phone conversation had been recorded using devices Kesha had strategically planted around the house. In the kitchen, she opened his hidden laptop and sent an encrypted message to Dr. Michelle Torres, a federal prosecutor specializing in financial crimes and a former college classmate. Package ready for delivery. Operation Manhattan initiated. Robert continued his celebration in the living room, completely unaware that his guests were also being recorded as they admitted to participating in corrupt schemes. Margaret Thornfield had just confessed to laundering money for her senator husband through charitable foundations. "Tyler is better off without that woman," Robert declared too loudly, clearly affected by alcohol. "Children like him need firm boundaries, not excessive affection from maids who don't know their place." Kesha went upstairs one last time to say goodbye to Tyler. The boy was in his room, rocking in the corner, silent tears streaming down his face. When he saw Kesha, his eyes lit up with desperate hope. "Are you coming back?" Tyler asked in his soft, hesitant voice. It was one of the few times he had formed a complete sentence since Kesha had met him. "Not in the way you imagine," Kesha replied, kneeling beside him. "But I promise you that things will change very soon. And when they do, you'll have people around you who really care about you." Tyler hugged her tightly, as if he knew he was saying goodbye to more than just a cook. He was saying goodbye to the only person in the house who had ever treated him like a human being. Walking down the stairs for the last time, Kesha paused at the door to the living room, where Robert continued mocking her memory to entertain his guests. "Problem solved," he declared. "I'll never have to worry about unsuitable people influencing my son again." Kesha smiled coldly. Robert Wittmann was about to discover that he had made the biggest mistake of his corrupt life. Firing Kesha wasn't the end of his problems. It was the beginning of an operation of justice that she had meticulously planned since the day she set foot in that mansion. As she walked toward the exit, Kesha activated the last recording device she had hidden in the main hall. In 48 hours, Robert would discover that underestimating a black woman with a Harvard degree wasn't just racism, it was terminal stupidity. 48 hours after being fired, Kesha sat in the modest Brooklyn apartment she shared with her sister, meticulously organizing 2 years of evidence against Robert Wittmann. Photographs of fraudulent financial documents, audio recordings of involuntary confessions, intercepted emails revealing bribes to politicians, all cataloged with the precision of someone who had been preparing for this moment since her first day on the job. "Are you sure about this, Kesha?" asked Dr. Michelle Torres, the federal prosecutor, as she examined the documents spread across the dining table. "This is enough to take down not just Robert, but half of Manhattan's elite. We're talking about tax evasion in the tens of millions, disability benefits fraud, money laundering through fake foundations." Kesha smiled coldly. "Michelle, my father didn't die of a heart attack. He was systematically murdered by the smear campaign Robert orchestrated when my dad discovered that Tyler was being unnecessarily medicated to simulate more severe disabilities, just so Robert could receive government benefits." Michelle stopped flipping through the files and looked directly at her friend. "Dr. James Washington was your father? The neurosurgeon who was discredited by the media 2 years ago? My father discovered that Robert was drugging Tyler with medications that intensified his autistic symptoms," Kesha continued, her voice controlled but heavy with pain. "When Dad tried to report this to the medical board, Robert used his network of contacts to destroy his reputation. He planted false evidence of misconduct, bribed patients to give false testimony, and orchestrated a full-scale media campaign. The revelation was devastating. Dr. James Washington had been one of the most respected neurosurgeons in the country before his career was destroyed by accusations that were never proven, but which ruined his professional and personal life. Dad died believing he had lost everything because of a medical error he never made," Kesha whispered, holding a photograph of her father in his white coat. "He never knew he had been the victim of a calculated conspiracy to silence him." Michelle was silent, processing the enormity of the situation. "Kesha, this isn't just about financial justice. It's about posthumously clearing his name." "It's about much more than that," Kesha corrected, standing and walking to the window, gazing out at the city. "It's about Tyler. That boy is being poisoned daily by unnecessary medications that are hindering his real development. Robert profits from his own son's suffering." Meanwhile, at the Manhattan mansion, Robert Wittmann celebrated what he believed was a complete victory. He had gotten rid of the problematic maid and hired a new German cook, blonde, quiet, obedient, and unquestioning. "Problem solved," he commented over the phone to Margaret Thornfield. "Some people need to learn boundaries the hard way. Now Tyler can be treated properly, without unnecessary emotional interference." What Robert didn't know was that at that very moment, federal agents were obtaining search and seizure warrants based on the evidence Kesha had provided. Dr. Torres had worked for 2 days straight, building a case that would turn the investigation into one of the largest financial fraud operations of the decade. "The operation will take place on Monday," Michelle informed Kesha during an encrypted call. "We're going in simultaneously. Search and seizure at the mansion, freezing of all bank accounts, opening a congressional investigation into the politicians who took bribes, and immediate cancellation of fraudulent benefits." Kesha felt a cold satisfaction. "What about Tyler?" "He will be temporarily removed from custody and undergo an independent medical evaluation. If we confirm that his unnecessary medication is causing harm, Robert will lose custody permanently." Tyler was locked in his room, sedated with drugs that suppressed not only his autistic behaviors, but also his natural personality and ability to grow. The boy who had danced and smiled with Kesha now spent his days in a near-vegetative state, generating $4,000 a month in government benefits for Robert. "Sunday will be a special day," Robert announced to his guests, raising his crystal glass. "I will close the biggest deal of my career, an international partnership that will triple my investments." What he didn't know was that Sunday would indeed be special, but not for the reasons he imagined. At 6 a.m. on Sunday morning, while Robert slept peacefully in his master suite, Kesha was finalizing the last details of an operation she had planned with the precision of brain surgery. She had discovered something that would make her revenge even more devastating. Robert was not only a fraudster, he was also a murderer. The evidence proved that he had deliberately sabotaged the medical treatment of 3 previous autistic children to maximize the benefits he received, resulting in the deaths of 2 of them. "Michelle," Kesha called one last time before the operation. "I found something else. Robert isn't just a con artist. He's a man who kills children for money." The revelation was so shocking that Michelle was silent for several seconds. "Kesha, that changes everything. We're no longer talking about tax fraud. We're talking about multiple homicide." On Sunday morning, when Robert went downstairs to eat his $300 breakfast, prepared by the new German cook, he had no idea that his life of privilege was about to end so brutally that it would make his earlier humiliation seem like child's play. Because Kesha Washington wasn't just an educated black woman seeking justice. She was a force of nature disguised as a maid. And Robert was about to discover that underestimating someone with that level of intelligence and determination wasn't just stupidity. It was social and financial suicide. Monday, 6:15 a.m. Robert Wittmann woke up to the sound of sirens and violent banging on the front door of his mansion. Still in his silk pajamas, he went downstairs, irritated, assuming a neighbor's alarm had triggered the disturbance. "FBI, open the door immediately!" The authoritative voice pierced the marble and bulletproof glass like a dagger. Robert felt the blood freeze in his veins. Through the security camera, he saw at least 15 federal agents in bulletproof vests, some carrying seizure equipment. "There must be some mistake," he muttered to himself, though his hands trembled. As he unlocked the door, Dr. Michelle Torres showed her badge and the search and seizure warrant before Robert could even speak. "Robert Wittmann, you are under investigation for federal benefits fraud, tax evasion, money laundering, bribery of public officials, and criminal negligence resulting in death." The list of charges continued for another 30 seconds, each crime read with surgical precision as agents spread out through the mansion. "This is ridiculous." Robert exploded, his face red with indignation. "I'm going to sue you all for trespassing. My lawyers will—" "Your lawyers have already been notified," Michelle interrupted coldly. "And your bank accounts were frozen at 5 SOAS this morning, including the offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands you thought no one knew about." It was at that moment Robert saw Kesha calmly walk through the front door, no longer wearing a cook's uniform, but a professional suit that revealed exactly who she had always been. Behind her, Tyler walked hand in hand with a girl of about 12 whom Robert had never seen before. "You," Robert whispered, his voice thick with disbelief and growing horror. "Dr. Kesha Washington." She introduced herself formally for the first time. "Daughter of Dr. James Washington, the neurosurgeon you systematically destroyed 2 years ago. And this is my niece, Destiny, a child behavioral therapy specialist." Robert felt the ground collapse beneath his feet. "Impossible. You're a cook. We checked your references." Kesha smiled with a coldness that made Robert instinctively recoil. "You checked the references of Kesha Williams, an identity I built specifically to infiltrate your home. Dr. Kesha Washington never needed references to work as a cook, because she was never a cook." Michelle stepped forward carrying a box of evidence. "Mr. Wittmann, we have here 2,000 hours of audio recordings, 300 photographs of fraudulent financial documents, intercepted emails proving bribery of 12 public officials, and falsified medical records proving that you deliberately medicated Tyler with unnecessary substances to intensify his autistic condition. Furthermore," Michelle continued, her voice sharp with gravity, "we have evidence that you applied the same fraudulent scheme to 3 other children, resulting in the deaths of 2 from intentional drug overdoses." Robert staggered, leaning against the wall. "You can't prove any of this." Kesha pulled a tablet from her pocket and showed Robert the screen. It was a video recording from 3 months earlier, capturing him explaining in detail to Margaret. Thornfield how to maximize government benefits by over-medicating autistic children. Surprise, Kesha said calmly. Every conversation you've had in the last 2 years has been recorded. Every suspicious phone call, every drunken confession, every moment you revealed your true monstrous nature. Yes, dear? Kesha knelt beside the boy. And this time, no one will separate us. Robert watched the interaction between Kesha and Tyler, finally realizing he had lost much more than money and freedom. He had lost the only person who genuinely cared about his son. For 2 years, Kesha had stood by and endured. Now she faced him with unshakable resolve. I watched you poison an innocent child out of greed. I documented every unnecessary dose of medication you forced Tyler to take. I recorded every conversation where you celebrated the benefits you received from his suffering. Michelle revealed a second tablet. Your bank records show that over the past 5 years, you received $240,000 in fraudulent benefits using Tyler as bait. Meanwhile, you denied him the real therapies that could have helped his development. And there's more, Kesha continued relentlessly. Destiny here is a medical student and child development specialist. For the past 3 months, she has been working with Tyler remotely through secret video calls, trying to reverse the damage you caused with excessive medication. Destiny has an IQ of 162, Kesha explained. She is also autistic, just like Tyler. But unlike what you did to your own son, our family has always treated her autism as a gift, not a source of income. At that moment, Margaret Thornfield was escorted away by police in handcuffs, screaming about her rights and threatening to sue everyone. 2 other guests from Saturday's dinner were also arrested, their participation in the corrupt schemes already proven through Kesha's recordings. The empire you built on the suffering of innocent children is over, Kesha declared, watching Robert being handcuffed. But this isn't revenge, Robert. It's justice. Revenge would be letting you live, thinking you might escape the consequences. Justice is making sure you never harm another child again. But what would happen to Tyler and Kesha in the coming weeks would prove that justice was not just about punishing the guilty. It was about rebuilding the lives he had tried to destroy. 6 months later, Dr. Kesha Washington walked through the halls of Columbia University as a tenured professor in the Department of Child Development. Her immaculate white lab coat contrasted with the radiant smile that never left her face. Tyler, now on proper medication and free from the drugs Robert had forced on him, ran across campus alongside Destiny. Both participated in a revolutionary inclusion program for neurodivergent children. Dr. Washington, called Dean Dr. Peaton, approaching with genuine admiration. The results of your program are extraordinary. Tyler and the other children have shown progress our experts once thought impossible. Kesha watched Tyler interact naturally with other children for the first time in his life. His cognitive development was flourishing without the chemical restraints his father had imposed. Professor Peaton, Tyler always had immense potential, Kesha replied. He just needed someone to believe in him instead of profiting from his suffering. Meanwhile, Robert Wittmann was discovering that the fall of an empire built on crime and prejudice is devastatingly swift. Sentenced to 25 years in prison without parole, he had lost not only his $200 million fortune, but also any shred of respect he once commanded. "Hey, celebrity!" shouted an inmate during shower time at the federal penitentiary. "I hear you. Liked poisoning children for money. In here, that has a special name." Robert kept his eyes down, his trembling hands clutching a tray of food worth pennies compared to the $1,000 dinners he once attended. The irony was perfect. The man who humiliated others for their skin color and social class was now the most despised inmate in a prison where hierarchy was based on crimes committed. Margaret Thornfield, arrested as his accomplice, lost not only her freedom but also her marriage. Her senator husband filed for a public divorce to save his political career, abandoning her in a women's cell where she discovered privilege does not buy protection or respect. The adoption process is complete, Dr. Torres informed Kesha during a late afternoon call. Tyler is now officially your son, and Robert's Victim Restitution Fund has already released $2 million to pay for his special education and that of other children who were harmed. Tyler ran to Kesha as she hung up the phone, his eyes shining with an intelligence never allowed to flourish before. "Mommy Kesha," he said clearly, using words Robert had always insisted he would never pronounce. "Can I play piano today?" "Of course, my love," Kesha replied, stroking his hair. The boy had become far more than a mission of justice. He had become her son of the heart. "Destiny is waiting to play that new song with you." The modest Brooklyn apartment had been replaced by a spacious house in Queens, financed not with dirty money like Robert's mansion, but with the honest salary Kesha earned by transforming lives through education. Tyler had his own music studio where he spent hours creating compositions that revealed an unsuspected artistic genius. "You know what's the most ironic part of this whole story?" Kesha remarked to Michelle during a celebratory dinner. "Robert always said Tyler was a burden, a medical expense with no return. Today, Tyler composes music that is being studied in conservatories as examples of neurodivergent genius." Michelle laughed, raising her wine glass. "The genius Robert tried to suppress with drugs has become living proof that he understood nothing about the real value of people." Last Sunday in October, Kesha received an unexpected letter from prison. It was from Robert, handwritten in shaky lettering that betrayed the despair of someone who finally understood the magnitude of his choices. "Dr. Washington," the letter began formally, "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know that I finally understand what I really did, not just to Tyler, but to all the children I used to exploit for money. I see Tyler on television, playing the piano and smiling, and I realize it could have been that way all along, if I hadn't been a monster." Kesha read the entire letter in which Robert confessed to additional crimes and begged her to continue, caring for Tyler with the love he had never known how to give. At the end, a single line summed up 2 years of perfectly executed justice. "You didn't just save my son. You showed me who he should have been." Tyler, now 9 years old and developing social skills that astonish the experts, occasionally asked about his biological father. Kesha always responded with age-appropriate honesty. "Your first father was sick in a way that hurt people. Now, he's in a place where he's learning to get better." Kesha and Tyler's story became a case study in universities across the country, proving that neurodivergent children can thrive when they receive unconditional love instead of being treated as a source of profit. Destiny, now 13, had become a national activist for the rights of children with special needs, using her own experience to educate families about acceptance and proper development. 3 years ago, I was just a black woman disguised as a cook in a racist mansion, Kesha reflected during a lecture at Harvard University. "Today, I am the mother of an extraordinary child who has taught me that the best revenge is not destroying our enemies, but building something so beautiful that their evil becomes irrelevant." Tyler, sitting in the front row, applauded proudly for the woman who had transformed his medical nightmare into a musical dream come true. At only 9 years old, he was already composing symphonies that seasoned professionals spent decades mastering. Robert Wittmann had tried to destroy a black woman and an autistic child out of greed, but instead he created 2 transformative forces who changed national legislation on children's rights. The best revenge is not to repay the evil we've suffered, but to achieve greatness so powerful that it makes those who tried to diminish us irrelevant. If this story of justice,
overcoming adversity, and unconditional love touched your heart,
subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove sometimes karma just needs a little help from courageous people willing to fight for what is right. Share it with those who need to believe that every monster can be defeated, and every child deserves to be loved exactly as they are.